the hidden system that controls your life. Right now, as you're watching this, you're living inside a system so powerful, so perfectly designed that you can't escape it even if you tried. And the crazy part? One man built this entire system over 150 years ago, and it's still running your life today. Let me paint you a picture. It's 1870. There's a 31-year-old guy in Cleveland, Ohio. He controls just 4% of America's oil business. Nothing special, right? But watch what happens next. 10 years later, by 1880, he controls 90%. And by 1904, he's got 91% of all oil production and 85% of all oil sales in America. His name was John D. Rockefeller, and what he built wasn't just an oil company. He built a blueprint, a playbook that every major corporation still uses today. Think about it. The gas you pump into your car, the medicine you take when you're sick, the apps on your phone, the food you eat for dinner, the bank where you keep your money, every single one of them is using the exact same playbook that Rockefeller created. And I'm going to show you exactly how it works, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. You'll spot it everywhere. Now, before we dive in, let me tell you something important. Rockefeller didn't just get rich and disappear into history. No, no, no. What he built was way more powerful than that. He created a system, and systems don't die when their creator dies. They grow, they spread, they evolve, and that's exactly what happened here. Let's start at the beginning. John Rockefeller was born in 1839 in a small town in New York. His dad? A con man who went around selling fake cancer cures to desperate people. His mom? A deeply religious Baptist woman. Now, I want you to remember this combination because it's important. From his dad, Rockefeller learned to be ruthless, to do whatever it takes to win. From his mom, he learned absolute moral certainty. He genuinely believed that God had chosen him to organize business and bring order to chaos. This wasn't just some excuse. Rockefeller truly thought that crushing his competitors was a holy mission. In his mind, he wasn't destroying people's lives and businesses. He was bringing efficiency and order to a wasteful world. This belief made him absolutely unstoppable. In 1859, something big happened. Oil was discovered in Pennsylvania. Suddenly, thousands of people rushed to drill for oil. It was chaos. Pure chaos. Prices would crash one day because there was too much oil, then spike the next day because of shortages. Fortunes were made and lost overnight. It was like the Wild West, but with oil instead of gold. Rockefeller was just 20 years old, working as a bookkeeper. But he saw something nobody else did. While everyone was running around trying to strike it rich by drilling for oil, Rockefeller looked at the situation and thought, drilling is way too risky. It's basically gambling. But refining oil, turning that crude black stuff into kerosene for lamps, now that was a real business. So in 1863, Rockefeller invested $4,000 into his first oil refinery in Cleveland. Within just 2 years, it became the biggest refinery in the city. But here's the thing, Cleveland had 30 refineries, all fighting for business. The competition was brutal. Most of these refineries were barely surviving, living on the edge of bankruptcy. And this is where Rockefeller's genius kicked in. Most business owners would try to compete by lowering their prices or making a better product. Not Rockefeller. He looked at the situation and decided on something totally different. He wasn't going to compete. He was going to eliminate competition entirely. And the way he did it changed business forever. He used something called vertical integration. Let me break this down for you because it's super important. Most refineries did one thing. They refined oil. They'd buy crude oil from drillers, turn it into kerosene, then sell it to distributors. They controlled just one step in the process. Rockefeller said, "Why should I pay other people to do all these steps? I'll just do everything myself." So he started buying everything. He bought the factories that made the barrels to store the oil. He bought train cars and even parts of railroads to ship his oil. He bought warehouses to store everything. He bought distribution networks to sell directly to customers. Every single step that used to be a separate business making money for someone else, Rockefeller brought under his control. Now, think about what this meant. Other refineries had to pay 25 cents for each barrel. Rockefeller made his own for 15 cents. Competitors had to pay railroads to ship their oil. Rockefeller owned the tank cars and made secret deals with the railroads. Get this, the railroads actually paid him rebates to ship his oil, and they charged his competitors more. That's not just smart business. That's predatory. That's brutal. Rockefeller could now sell kerosene so cheap that his competitors would lose money while he still made a profit. And that's exactly what he did. He used his advantages like a weapon. By 1870, he created the Standard Oil Company. His operation had grown massive, but he still only controlled 4% of American refining. And Rockefeller looked at that number and basically said, "That's not nearly enough." So he launched phase 2 of his plan, horizontal integration. If vertical integration means controlling the whole supply chain from top to bottom, horizontal integration means buying or destroying every competitor on your level. And what Rockefeller did next was so ruthless that historians gave it a name, the Cleveland Massacre. Picture this, it's 1872. Over just 3 months, Rockefeller went to every single refinery owner in Cleveland. One by one, he'd sit them down and make them an offer to buy their refinery. If they said yes, he'd pay them a fair price and often even hire them to keep running the place. Seems reasonable, right? But if they said no, that's when things got dark. Rockefeller would start a price war. He dropped the price of kerosene below what it cost to make. His competitors, who couldn't produce as cheaply as he could, would lose money on every single sale. They were bleeding cash. They had two choices, sell to Rockefeller or go bankrupt and lose everything. Most of them sold. A few tried to fight. Every single one of them lost. By the end of 1872, Rockefeller controlled 25 out of Cleveland's 26 refineries. He went from 4% to 25% of all American refining in just 3 months. Let that sink in. 3 months. This was the blueprint. Offer to buy, and if they refuse, destroy them economically and then buy the ruins for cheap. But Rockefeller wasn't done, not even close. Cleveland was just practice. Through the 1870s, he expanded Standard Oil across the entire country. New York, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Baltimore. Same tactics everywhere. Secret deals with railroads that gave him lower shipping costs. Vertical integration that made his production costs the lowest. And brutal price wars that crushed anyone who wouldn't sell. By 1879, Standard Oil controlled 90% of America's refining capacity. 90%. That's not a business, that's a monopoly. That's total domination. Now here's where Rockefeller showed he wasn't just ruthless, he was a genius. He understood that monopolies have two big problems. First, they're illegal. Well, they became illegal in 1890 when Congress passed the Sherman Antitrust Act specifically to break up companies like Standard Oil. Second, everybody hates monopolies. The public absolutely despised Rockefeller. They called him a robber baron, a tyrant, the most hated man in America. So Rockefeller needed to solve both of these problems. And in 1882, his lawyers came up with something brilliant, the trust. Here's how it worked. And stay with me because this is important. Standard Oil of Ohio couldn't legally own companies in other states, but a trust could. So Rockefeller created a trust that held the stock of all the Standard Oil companies. 41 people, all Rockefeller and his close friends, controlled the trust. The trust controlled all the companies. This was the first major corporate trust in American history, and every other industry immediately copied it. Sugar, tobacco, steel, they all created trusts using Rockefeller's model. The trust let Rockefeller control a nationwide monopoly while technically following the law. But more importantly, it created something new, the holding company, a company that doesn't actually make anything, it just owns other companies. Sound familiar? That's because every major corporation today uses this structure. Alphabet owns Google, Meta owns Facebook and Instagram, Amazon owns Whole Foods and Twitch. They're all descendants of Rockefeller's trust structure. By 1904, Standard Oil controlled 91% of oil refining and 85% of final sales. Rockefeller was worth $900 million, which is $25 billion in today's money. But at his absolute peak in 1913, he was worth $400 billion in today's dollars. That's richer than Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Bill Gates combined. The richest individual in modern history, and he built all that wealth through the system. But people were getting angry, really angry. In 1906, a journalist named Ida Tarbell published an explosive investigation exposing all of Rockefeller's tactics: the secret railroad deals, the predatory pricing, the crushing of competitors. The public was outraged. In 1911, the Supreme Court finally ruled that Standard Oil was an illegal monopoly. They ordered it broken up into 34 separate companies. This should have been the end of Rockefeller's empire, right? The destruction of everything he built? Wrong. This is where the story gets really interesting. Because when Standard Oil was broken up, Rockefeller still owned shares in all 34 companies. Standard Oil of New Jersey became Exxon. Standard Oil of New York became Mobil. Standard Oil of California became Chevron. All these companies you know today, they're pieces of Standard Oil. And here's the kicker. Before the breakup, Standard Oil stock was worth about $600 per share. After the breakup, the combined value of all 34 companies was over $2,000 per share. The breakup didn't destroy Rockefeller's wealth. It tripled it. He became even richer. Why? Because forcing the companies to compete made them innovate and become more efficient. And breaking one monopoly into 34 companies that still dominated their regions wasn't really breaking up the monopoly, it was just reorganizing it. And today, most of those 34 companies have merged back together. Exxon and Mobil merged in 1999. Chevron bought up other pieces. BP bought pieces. The Standard Oil monopoly that was supposedly destroyed in 1911 has quietly put itself back together over the last 100 years. The system broke itself up to avoid regulation, then silently reassembled itself. But here's the thing, and this is crucial. Standard Oil isn't even Rockefeller's most important legacy. The real legacy is the system itself, the methods, the playbook. And that playbook is being used by every major corporation right now. Let me show you. Amazon uses vertical integration exactly like Rockefeller. Amazon started selling books online. Now, they own the warehouses, the delivery trucks, the logistics network, the payment processing, even the cloud servers that host their competitors' websites. Amazon Web Services makes $90 billion a year. That's more than their retail profits. Rockefeller controlled refineries, railroads, and distribution. Amazon controls retail, logistics, and cloud computing. Same playbook, different century. Amazon also uses horizontal consolidation. They've bought over 100 companies: Whole Foods, Zappos, Twitch, Ring, MGM Studios. When they can't buy a competitor, they just copy their products. Third-party sellers on Amazon report their sales data, and Amazon analyzes it, figures out what's selling well, creates an Amazon Basics version, and promotes it above the original. This is the modern version of Rockefeller's price war. It's legal, barely regulated, and devastatingly effective. Google? They use the trust structure. Alphabet is a holding company that owns Google, YouTube, Waymo, DeepMind, and dozens of other companies. It's the Standard Oil Trust with a modern name. One parent company controlling multiple operating companies. This structure protects the parent from lawsuits, allows tax advantages, and makes it really complicated for regulators to break them up because each subsidiary is technically separate. Pharmaceutical companies use Rockefeller's regulatory capture strategy. Rockefeller didn't just compete in markets, he shaped the rules. He lobbied for railroad regulations that favored Standard Oil. He worked with politicians to set kerosene standards that his refineries could meet, but competitors couldn't. Today's drug companies do the exact same thing. They fund the FDA through user fees. They lobby for patent extensions. They literally write the regulations they're supposed to be regulated by. Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Merck, they all learn from Rockefeller. Control the regulators and you control the market. Banks use the holding company structure. J.P. Morgan Chase is a holding company owning Chase Bank, J.P. Morgan Investment Bank, and many other subsidiaries. Bank of America, Citigroup, Wells Fargo, all holding companies. When the government tried to regulate banks after the 2008 financial crisis, the holding company structure made it nearly impossible. Which part do you regulate, the parent or the subsidiaries? Rockefeller solved this problem in 1882. Banks just copied his solution 100 years later. And then there's philanthropy. This might be Rockefeller's most brilliant innovation. In 1913, he created the Rockefeller Foundation with $250 million. That's $7 billion today. The foundation funded medical research, education, public health. On the surface, this looks like charity, Rockefeller giving back to society. But look closer. The foundation let him avoid massive estate taxes. It gave him control over which universities got funding, which meant he controlled what got taught and researched. And most importantly, it bought him legitimacy. The man who destroyed thousands of competitors, who was called the most hated man in America, suddenly became a beloved philanthropist. Genius. The Rockefeller Foundation shaped modern medical education. It funded Johns Hopkins, University of Chicago, Rockefeller University. It established the model for medical schools that emphasized pharmaceutical treatments. This isn't conspiracy theory, it's documented history. The foundation shaped American medicine to favor the pharmaceutical model, and pharmaceutical companies, many descended from Standard Oil's chemical divisions, made enormous profits. Today, every billionaire uses this playbook. Bill Gates has the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with $75 billion. It funds global health, shapes World Health Organization policy, influences governments. Mark Zuckerberg created the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. Warren Buffett pledged most of his wealth to the Gates Foundation. These aren't just charity, they're tax avoidance, legacy building, and policy influence. Rockefeller invented the model. Modern billionaires just perfected it. The Rockefeller family still exists, still influential. David Rockefeller, John D's grandson, died in 2017 at 101 years old. He was chairman of Chase Manhattan Bank, one of the most powerful men in global finance for 50 years. The family's wealth, estimated at $11 billion, is spread across hundreds of trusts and foundations. They still shape policy, fund research, and influence politics 150 years after John D. started Standard Oil. Now, here's the most important part, and I really want you to understand this. The system isn't designed for you to escape. It's designed to be invisible until you're already trapped inside it. Think about your daily life. You buy gasoline from Exxon, Mobil, or Chevron, all descendants of Standard Oil. You buy stuff from Amazon, which uses Rockefeller's vertical integration and horizontal consolidation. You search on Google, structured as a trust, just like Standard Oil. You take medications developed through a medical system shaped by Rockefeller Foundation grants. You bank with institutions using Rockefeller's holding company structures. Your taxes fund regulations written by the very industries being regulated, just like Rockefeller designed. The system is self-perpetuating. It concentrates wealth. It eliminates competition. It captures regulators. It uses philanthropy to buy legitimacy while avoiding taxes. This is the Rockefeller system. And it's not some hidden conspiracy. It's just corporate structure. Legal, accepted, replicated by every dominant company in every major industry. You cannot buy oil outside the descendants of Standard Oil. You cannot avoid Amazon's logistics network. You cannot opt out of pharmaceutical medicine shaped by Rockefeller grants. You cannot escape the banking system built on Rockefeller's model. You live inside this system, and it extracts wealth from you every single day and concentrates it at the top, exactly as Rockefeller designed it to do in 1870. Here's what makes Rockefeller different from other wealthy businessmen of his time. Carnegie built steel mills. When he died, U.S. Steel remained, but Carnegie's personal control ended. Vanderbilt built railroads. When he died, the railroads continued, but broke apart. J.P. Morgan built financial empires. When he died, his partners carried on, but his personal power faded. But Rockefeller? Rockefeller built a system, and systems don't die with their creators. They evolve, they adapt, they spread. Standard Oil was broken up in 1911, but the vertical integration model spread to every industry. The trust became the holding company. The regulatory capture became lobbying. The philanthropy became foundations. Every piece of Rockefeller's system was copied, refined, and embedded into corporate law, tax codes, and regulatory frameworks. Rockefeller died in 1937, but his system got stronger after his death because it wasn't dependent on him. It was structural. It was built into the foundation of how business works. Let me show you exactly how this system extracts wealth from you right now, today. You need gasoline for your car. You have choices: Exxon, Chevron, BP, Shell. But here's the truth. All of them are price-coordinated companies descended from Standard Oil or using its exact methods. You're not really choosing. You're just selecting between branches of the same tree. You need to buy products. Amazon, Walmart, Target. Amazon dominates through vertical integration. Walmart and Target have to match its scale or die. Same system, different companies wearing different masks. You need internet search. Google has 92% market share. That's higher than Standard Oil's peak of 91%. But Google isn't considered a monopoly by regulators because it's free. You pay with your data instead of money. Rockefeller would have absolutely loved this innovation. A monopoly so complete that users don't even realize they're paying for it. You need social media. Facebook has 3 billion users. Instagram? Also Facebook. WhatsApp? Also Facebook. You're not choosing between platforms. You're choosing which meta property to use. Horizontal consolidation, exactly like Rockefeller. You need healthcare. You see a doctor trained in a system shaped by Rockefeller Foundation grants. You take pharmaceuticals developed by companies using patents, regulations, and structures pioneered by Standard Oil's chemical divisions. You pay insurance companies using Rockefeller's corporate structures. Every single step, extraction. Every choice, an illusion. The average American spends $4,000 per year on gasoline, $3,000 on Amazon, $5,000 on healthcare beyond insurance, and $4,200 on internet and tech services. That's $13,200 per year flowing to companies using Rockefeller's system. Over a lifetime, that's $660,000 of wealth transfer, not to innovative startups or small businesses, but to monopolistic corporations using 150-year-old tactics. And you cannot escape it. You could refuse to buy gasoline, but you need transportation to work. You could refuse Amazon, but their pricing and convenience make it nearly impossible to avoid. You could refuse Google, but what alternative has 92% of the market? You could refuse Facebook, but social connection is controlled by Meta's platforms. You could refuse pharmaceutical medicine, but medical licensing, insurance coverage, and cultural acceptance are all shaped by the Rockefeller system. This is Rockefeller's ultimate achievement, not that he became the richest man in history, that he built a system that makes escape impossible. A system where every path leads back to consolidated corporate control, where competition is crushed before it threatens the dominant players, where regulators protect big companies instead of consumers, where philanthropy buys influence that keeps the system running. But here's what Rockefeller understood that most people miss. The system isn't evil. It's efficient. Vertical integration does reduce costs. Horizontal consolidation does eliminate wasteful competition. Regulatory capture does provide stability. Foundations do fund genuine research. The system actually works. It delivers products cheaper, faster, and more reliably than chaotic free markets. Before Standard Oil, kerosene cost 58 cents per gallon. After Standard Oil's efficiencies, 8 cents per gallon. That's an 86% price reduction. That's not exploitation. That's efficiency. Amazon delivers products in 2 days. Google answers every question instantly. ExxonMobil produces gasoline at massive scale. Pfizer develops life-saving drugs. The system does deliver value. The problem isn't that the system doesn't work. The problem is that it concentrates wealth at the top while delivering efficiency at the bottom. You get cheap gasoline, fast shipping, instant information, and effective medicine. Rockefeller's heirs get trillions in accumulated wealth. Both things are true at the same time. So what do? How do you respond to a system you cannot escape? You have 3 options. Option 1, accept it. Understand that consolidation and monopoly are features of advanced capitalism, not bugs in the system. Use the efficiencies they provide. Buy from Amazon. Use Google. Accept that wealth will concentrate at the top. Live your life within the system. Option 2, resist it. Support antitrust enforcement. Buy from small businesses even when it costs more. Use alternative platforms even when they're not as good. Vote for politicians who promise to break up monopolies. Make the system less efficient in exchange for less consolidation. Fight against the current. Option 3, understand it and position yourself accordingly. If you cannot escape the system, benefit from it. Buy stock in the companies that dominate. Exxon, Chevron, Amazon, Google, Pfizer, JP Morgan. If the system extracts wealth from everyone and concentrates it in these companies, then own pieces of these companies. This is what Rockefeller did. He owned Standard Oil while everyone else bought its products. He extracted wealth from the system he built. You can do the same. Not at his scale, obviously, but proportionally. This isn't financial advice. This is pattern recognition. The Rockefeller system has concentrated wealth for 150 years. It will continue concentrating wealth because it's embedded in corporate law, tax codes, and regulatory structures. Fighting it is noble, but exhausting. Escaping it is impossible. Understanding it and positioning yourself within it, that's pragmatic. John D. Rockefeller died in 1937 at 97 years old. He lived long enough to see Standard Oil broken up, then watch it reconsolidate and spread its methods across every industry. He lived long enough to see his foundation reshape American medicine and education. He lived long enough to see his grandchildren positioned at the top of American finance and industry. He built a system that outlived him by a century and will outlive all of us. The system is vertical integration, horizontal consolidation, corporate trusts, regulatory capture, and philanthropic influence. It started with Standard Oil. It spread to steel, railroads, sugar, tobacco, then to automobiles, electronics, pharmaceuticals, and technology. Now it dominates every single sector of the economy, and you cannot escape it. You can only understand it. Rockefeller once said, Competition is a sin. Most people hear that as pure greed, but Rockefeller actually meant it in a religious sense. Competition is wasteful. It duplicates effort. It destroys capital. Consolidation is righteous. It creates efficiency. It serves consumers through lower prices. In his mind, monopoly wasn't theft. It was the natural end state of efficient markets. This was Rockefeller's genuine worldview, and he built an entire system to enforce it. 150 years later, we're all living in that system. Amazon eliminates retail competition. Google eliminates search competition. Meta eliminates social media competition. Exxon, Chevron, and BP control oil. Pfizer, Merck, and J&J control pharmaceuticals. JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Citi control banking. The consolidation Rockefeller started has reached its logical conclusion. The end state isn't thousands of small competitors. It's 3 to 5 dominant players in every single industry, all using Rockefeller's playbook. And the consolidation continues right now, this year. Every year, fewer companies control more market share. Every year, barriers to entry get higher. Every year, the system gets harder to challenge or escape. This is the Rockefeller system, not Standard Oil, the company, the method, the blueprint, the playbook. And the method is eternal because it works. It's efficient, it's legal, it's embedded in the structure of capitalism itself. If this video showed you a system you'd never seen before, if you understand now that the corporate structures controlling your daily life were built by one man a century and a half ago, then you've just learned something that changes how you see the entire economy. You cannot escape the Rockefeller system, but you can see it now. And seeing it, understanding it, recognizing it when it's at work, that changes everything. John D. Rockefeller created a system you cannot escape. Vertical integration, horizontal consolidation, corporate trusts, regulatory capture, philanthropic influence. That system is the modern economy, and you're living in it right now at this very moment. Welcome to Rockefeller's world.